Welcome to the Citrine Ray of Ecstasy. So, the Citrine Ray of Ecstasy is all about embodiment, pleasure, expansion, and creation. So, let's talk about pleasure first. Our culture feeds us incredibly confusing messages about pleasure. Our pleasure pathways have become almost sort of co-opted by addictions and by cheap replacements, like addictions to sugar and alcohol and orgasms, things that give us an immediate high, but the pleasure is short-lived, and it gets us hooked into those specific pleasure high pathways, and then it ends up blocking all the other more expansive and subtle pleasure pathways that are in our bodies. So we're getting these very confusing messages about pleasure. We're fed information that wants to addict us, and then in exchange makes us feel ashamed about it. So this is how the culture does this for a reason, because it is when we fully open those pleasure pathways in our body that we discover how powerful we are in our abilities to expand and to create. So if you think about the poets of old, like Yeats and Keats and Rumi and Rilke and Hafiz, these poets that wrote about love and pleasure, and they would write, long poems all about their love affair with something in nature, or a love affair with divine love, with spirit. I'm even thinking of Mary Oliver as a more contemporary example of this, how she can just go into the moment of communing with nature and feel so much, and then share that feeling through her poetry and through their poetry. So this holds the key to the ecstatic. We can discover a lot through these incredible poets. Ecstasy is created within our body through communing with nature and the natural world. And so this doesn't have to be, like a tree or a flower. It can be another human being who you have a soulful connection with. It can be an animal. It can be like the feeling of your cat on your lap, purring and warming you. It can be with something that is in the invisible realm as well. And so there's all kinds of connections and communing that we can do with one another. And what is required of this is that we return fully to our bodies, and that we bring our consciousness, the main locus of our consciousness, from our minds into our bodies. So essentially we are thinking through our bodies. Our bodies do think, but they think often through feeling. And the thinking of our bodies, the wisdom of our bodies, the consciousness of our bodies is accessed through feeling. So through the 5 senses, plus many others, what you would call your extrasensory perceptions. All of that lives in your body. And so what we're doing when we return our consciousness to our body, and we begin to shift away from those pleasure pathways that we have been entrained in through our culture, which creates addiction, and also, by the way, creates a lot of shame. We are opening our body into so much more feeling, so much more pleasure than we had previously allowed and even knew was possible. Because this feeling world is so much more subtle. When we are able to open these pleasure pathways, we actually allow ourselves to surrender to our bodies and allow our bodies to show us what pleasure really is, rather than us telling our bodies what pleasure is. Pleasure is this piece of candy. Pleasure is this bag of salty chips. Pleasure is this orgasm I'm going to give myself right now, right? So instead, we're allowing our bodies to tell us what pleasure is and where our bodies want to go. We are unboxing and liberating our bodies to experience and to feel it all. And so you might go out in nature into a bed of wildflowers and just lay there and tune in to what your body is feeling and receiving. So the next piece of this is expansion. So as I said, we experience ecstasy, these great new avenues and pathways of pleasure, when we commune our energy with the energy of another. And when that happens, we are expanding beyond our borders, right? We're expanding beyond ourselves. We are receiving what the other has to offer, and in exchange, offering ourselves to another. So there is an exchange happening. And as we take in the other's energy, then ourselves are like, ooh, what of this do I want to incorporate into me and create from, make part of me, and so that's the expansion piece. We can actually expand who we are. We can say, you know what? I am going to begin to mimic this thing I just experienced from the other within me and create that and become more in a bigger container. And also, I'm going to use what I receive from the other and create a sacred third. So we see this straightforwardly in how we make babies, right? Egg and sperm come together. So in this instance, from the perspective of the ecstatic, which is the divine feminine archetype in the Citrine Ray, as the ecstatic is the one who is fully embodied in her pleasure, and her pleasure pathways are open to receive. She opens to receive that sperm, and then the sperm and the egg come together in communion, and they create a sacred third, a baby. So we do this with everything that we commune with. We open to that creative power within us when we commune with anything in nature or the natural world. So when you go into communion with other, you might, like the great poets, write a great poet, write a great story. But also you might come up with a brilliant new idea, a new invention, a new collaboration or event to hold. You might shift your identity and belief system. You might create new beliefs. You might have huge download come in around the truth of reality or existence or who you are. You might rewrite the story of who you are. There is so much potential that can come through when we allow ourselves to be open to receive. Thank you for watching. This is actually part 1. I'm going to come back in part 2 and talk more about embodiment. All right, and I'll see you there for that one.